I hope I understood, I heard properly the questions that were being asked. Let me start with the last one, because maybe it's the simplest. Question was about there is corruption in the country and it's serious. It is in government, and we want to fight it, we want to combat it. To whom do we report? The question arises because the questioner, I think, is saying, whom do I trust that they are not corrupt? How do you report corruption to the corrupt? What's that going to do? There's a number of us here from the Thabo Mbeki Foundation. Seth Palapala here. Sia Gebe there and some others. Muzi. No, I shouldn't expose you. Why don't you report to us? Tell us who's corrupt and then we'll act on it. I'm really being serious about that. I'm serious about because I understand. Working in government, for instance, you might be uncertain as to who is clean, and therefore have this challenge. To whom do I report this so that we can combat this? I'm saying one area, one place where you can report, I'm quite sure, is our foundation. And we would act on the matter. Because indeed, we too are very, very, very concerned to act on the matter of this corruption. There's an issue and question that was raised, and our colleague made a reference to the ANC document about the eye of the needle. And again, as I understood that question, our colleague will correct me if I'm wrong. As I understood it, he was saying the ANC has produced a document entitled The Eye of the Needle, which deals with the matter of the quality of leadership and raises questions of integrity, of acting as a genuine representative of the people, of being selfless, and so on. The document exists, but he's saying the ANC is not behaving as directed by that same document of the ANC. What do we do about that? That's how I understood the question. An important question. Many of us discuss this question and say, what is it that needs to be done? Indeed, so that the ANC behaves according to the documents and the policies it has itself produced. Now, with regard to this matter, which relates to the issue we're talking about, relating to corruption. If you look at the political report presented by Nelson Mandela at the 1997 African National Congress National Conference, one of the things that Nelson Mandela raised, may his soul rest in peace, was that since the ANC became government, it has been attracting into its ranks people who don't believe in its policies, in its values, but understand that this is now a governing party. And if I'm in it, the governing party, there's a possibility then I get into an official government position and do the stealing which our colleagues were talking about. That we are attracting into the ANC people who intend to use the ANC for corrupt purposes. Matter was raised by Nelson Mandela in that conference in 1997. The people who follow the ANC here would have read a document which drew a lot of attention, certainly within the ranks of the ANC, which was what was called a diagnostic report, produced by the then Secretary General of the ANC in 2017, Gwede Mantashe. Why the reason it's called diagnostic is because it was trying to diagnose what's wrong with the ANC. And it came to exactly the same conclusions that Nelson Mandela had come to 20 years earlier. Now, if you look at ANC official documents from 1997 to 2017, they all say the same thing, which is that the quality of the membership of the ANC is deteriorating. And therefore that you are accumulating within the ranks of the ANC people who are bound to do wrong things. They join the ANC in order to steal. And therefore they will steal. You can speak a million times about ending corruption. They won't end corruption. They will continue to be corrupt. That poses a challenge to the ANC itself. And fortunately for the ANC, today I'm not a representative of the ANC, so I'm not speaking for the ANC. I'm speaking as an observer. Fortunately for the ANC, at its 2017 national conference, it took a resolution on this matter relating to the quality of the membership of the ANC. And it said that the ANC needed a process of renewal and needed a process of renewal for its own survival. It didn't say just to correct things that are wrong. It said in order to survive, it must renew itself. Now, as I was quoting what has been said in ANC documents since 1997 about the quality of the membership, I think it is logical. It is logical that to renew itself, the ANC must look at the quality of these people who are members of the ANC, who then end up like me as presidents and ministers and this and that and the other. Who are these people? Are they really ANC? Or are they like these people that Professor Tagata was talking about, who became a stranger and a taker, who cared little for those who waited patiently for their return? And so when the ANC must come to you, to Professor Lenkabula here, and say, Vice Chancellor, we are the ANC renewed, she must ask the question, why do you say that? In what way are you renewed? And the ANC must be able to say, we chased away Thabo Mbeki because he was corrupt. The ANC has an obligation to itself to go back to the people and present itself as a credible ANC. The ordinary people in our villages, in our townships, everywhere, they know these people who are called ANC members because they live with them. That this person who is the chairperson of the branch of the ANC, this one is a thief. They know that. So if I go here back to Professor Lengabula and say, here is an authentic ANC branch, and she says this one led by a thief, it can't be. What I'm trying to say, colleague, I was trying to ask this question about the eye of a needle and what do we do practically to make sure that it actually takes effect within the ranks of the ANC itself. I'm saying that what the ANC itself has decided, which was repeated at this last national conference, this process of the renewal of the ANC must take place as a matter of urgency. The ANC says it's got a membership of 1 million plus. Quite why it needs so many members, I don't know. Because it doesn't. Hence the slogan which we borrowed from Lenin. This ghost was walking up and down the halls of Luthuli House. When Lenin talking about something different, as the Soviet Union was born, he used the phrase, better fewer, but better. Let's have fewer than 1 million, but better people who are true members of the ANC. That would have a very, very serious impact on this matter of corruption, in combating corruption, to deal with these people within the ranks of the ANC who are in the ANC for wrong reasons. I'm saying that better, fewer, but better would help to answer some of these questions that are posed. The matter about grey listing, I think we know that globally there's been this very serious effort to deal with problems of money laundering, related obviously to global crime. Whether it's money which comes through drug dealing or the money is used for terrorist activities, human trafficking, monies of this kind. Because if you have this money, in order to use it, you clean it, you launder it. You know, once, many years ago, I was still in government. I visited one of the European countries. At that time, there was a lot of discussion in that country, in their media, about crime in South Africa, high levels of crime and all that. So I decided, talking to this head of government, that I must address this question before he raises it. So I say, you see, we've got this problem in South Africa of crime. And then he stopped me, he says, no, wait a minute. Let me tell you something about crime. He says, in this country, every single day, there's $100 billion worth of, 100 million worth of, it's $1 billion, worth of drug money that is going through our economy, being laundered. So it'll pop up as shares in the respected companies. He says that scale of money laundering happens here in this country. So please, I'm sure in South Africa you don't have crime to that extent. So I'm just pointing to the seriousness with which this matter of global affair, money laundering was taken. And so indeed, therefore, something called the Financial Action Task Force was established, which basically under the OECD. And one of the tasks of the Financial Action Task Force, one of its tasks, is to monitor the incidence of this money laundering, which means all countries are required to have particular legislation and institutions, processes to deal with this matter. And in our case, we are part of that process. In our case, and I don't know, I was told 3, 4, I don't know how many years back, that Financial Action Task Force alerted us to this problem and said, South Africa, there are certain deficiencies in your systems to deal with the matter of money laundering, like this and that and the other. Please attend to this. And we didn't, which is what has led to the grey listing. Because in the end, they must then say, this particular country does not have enough of the measures to deal with this. So that you get labeled as a country that is, as a money launderer. That's got very serious negative consequences. Because then the global markets will deal with you as a money launderer. Well, you had the President Ramaphosa responded to this and said, we will attend to this matter. I believe that was a serious commitment. It can't be other than a serious commitment. We have to deal with it. So it's an issue. It's an issue which has been on our agenda for a number of years, but we ignored it. Hopefully it will be dealt with. The report, the recent report issued by Palapala, not issued, the public protector, as I understand it, has not issued a report on the matter of Palapala, but posed some questions to people who are involved, first of all, in complaining about the matter, like the DA and the AT and the ATM. And has said to them, in terms of our investigation, whatever, what is your view? It's not a final report. It's an interim report. So these others have said we will then respond to the request of the public protector to make an input about our own views. It's only after that the public protector will produce a final report. That's how I understand it. For public protector, it might mean no determination. So the report that the public protector has cleared President Ramaphosa is incorrect. They are in the process of working on the matter and have said that when they receive these inputs from others, then they will prepare their final report. That is how, as I understand the matter. And indeed, that communication of theirs to the parties concerned, it leaked. It was not a public release. Because they were not making any proposal to the public to engage the matter. That's the public protector. They were communicating to the people concerned. So I hope that we will continue to treat it like that, that there's no determination that's been made by the public protector on the matter. And indeed, obviously, the question that our colleague raised about grey listing, he referred to Palapala. And that is correct, the reference. Because the story was that there's a Sudanese businessman who lives in Dubai, who came to South Africa carrying lots and lots of cash in dollars, came through Oliver Tambo Airport, declared the money, bought buffaloes. And I'm sure all of us have heard this, that the Commissioner of Taxes, Mr. Gisberter, have said there is no record of such monies being declared at OR Tambo Airport. So that record doesn't exist. It's not been found. But there's no assumption to think that it exists, but has not been found. So it hasn't been found. And therefore, the suspicion arises naturally. Is this not part of money laundering? It arises naturally. Because I don't know how much money I've owned at any particular time, but certainly never owned $580,000. And it's strange, it's odd, that the successful business person who's got that amount of money and can buy buffaloes walks around with that kind of money as cash. It's a strange concept. All of this emphasize, it draws attention to this issue, to the question. Are we not yet dealing with the problem of money laundering? So I'm saying that the colleague, when he said that this money laundering piece, a grey listing business, and is this Palapala thing not related to that? I'm saying that's a legitimate issue to arise. But of course, yet to be proved whether, in fact, it is money laundering. Our sister has raised the question about what she called territorial integrity and what's happening. I think she was talking about the war in Ukraine. And she related this thing to, Professor Phil talked about right globalization. And I wrote here fiat money. I think it's clear that the conflict in Ukraine is in many respects a conflict between the US and the Western countries against Russia. An important part of it, obviously, this is fact, has been not only the supply of weapons to Ukraine by the Western countries, but sanctions against Russia. And so some of the, as we've all seen, that effort to impose sanctions on Russia and have it isolated economically, globally, hasn't worked. Because countries like China, like India, many African countries, countries in Latin America have not joined that boycott campaign. And part of what's risen in that context is a question that our colleague is raising, which is about the use of the dollar as an international reserve currency. It's clear, this is part of what is happening, that many countries are saying, in order to avoid this consequence of the imposition of sanctions by the United States on the basis that you are using their currency, in order to avoid the consequences of sanctions that arise from that, let's walk away from the dollar. And hence there's a global discussion taking place about that, and some of it is bilateral. When Russia trades with China, there's no reason why they must use dollars to exchange, none. I saw that even India is saying the same thing. So globally, there's a discussion that is taking place to say we must find alternative means of trading among ourselves and not subject ourselves to the situation where there's one currency in the world which becomes a global reserve currency because it gives the country that is the issuer of the money, that's the United States, it gives it the power to impose its will on everybody because you are depending on the dollar. So there is that discussion that is going on. I don't know where it's going to end, but I think one can see the logic of it. One can see the logic of it. For instance, again arising from that conflict, one of the matters that that's come up very sharply, is that many African countries depend on wheat, which comes from the Ukraine and Russia. Many African countries depend on fertilizer, which comes from Russia. And part of the problem with that, in the context of what we're discussing, is that if the African countries want to buy this wheat, they've got to buy it in dollars. But there are the sanctions which prohibit particular relations with Russia. So in the end, you say that we can't use this currency, so there's no alternative currency. And that's part of the reason, only part of the reason, for instance, that the Russians have said that they appreciate the fact that there are many African countries who are going to suffer from very low yields of crops because of the absence of fertilizer, which is going to impact very negatively on food security and then all of these issues. And therefore, they've said we are then ready to donate this fertilizer to the African countries to avoid this obligation to be using particular kinds of money because the fertilizer is needed. So it's better that we as a country and the companies just donate this fertilizer. And indeed, I might say this, that the second biggest producer of fertilizer in the world is a Russian company. And they came to discuss this matter with the foundation. We discussed it with them to say it is very correct. The continent needs this fertilizer. And we can't use the obstacle of a dollar or whatever to deny the continent this thing because it's really a matter of life and death for our people. So The AU, fortunately, AU also in this last conference, summit, they took up the same matter. So hopefully the matter will be acted upon. I'm coming back to this matter, therefore, that again you have an instance here which says it is better that we had a diversified financial system rather than to be so tied up with one currency. Hence, what the conflict that is taking place in Ukraine has produced that particular consequence. Now, I don't know whether our government, we've got a colleague here who comes from government, whether they have been discussing this matter. Yeah. As to whether South Africa stands with regard to all of this. Because we're a big trading country. We're a very big trading country, and the matter of this reassessment globally about the global financial system would be a matter of direct concern to us. It should be. And when we seek to make an input with regard to that. The matter about what do I think about is it Section 194, process in Parliament concerning the public protector? Well, I think what we are having, what's happening in Parliament is something that it's born out of, it happens because of the systems we ourselves put in place. That you've got all of these institutions, constitutional institutions, like the public protector, or the Auditor General, or whoever. These institutions facilitating democracy. There must be a process whereby, if there's dissatisfaction with the performance of those institutions, protected as they are by the fact that they are constitutional bodies, there must be a way to deal with, if we want this person gone, what do we do? So processes were put in place to achieve that. So parties have raised questions about whether the current public protector is a fit and proper person to be a public protector. Whether that concern is right or wrong, I don't know. But matter has been raised. And fortunately, there are processes in place to deal with that. And I'm very glad, for instance, currently, as you saw, the public protector is presenting her own case to that committee. Evidence has been presented against her, which is negative. She's presenting her own case, and I think it's very good that she's able to explain herself and explain some of the things, critical things that might be said about her. So I think it's a healthy process. And we need to allow it to take its course. And I'm quite sure that Parliament in the end will come to some determination on this, based on what this particular committee will report to the National Assembly in the end, to saying, having had this and that and the other, on the basis of these facts, having listened to both sides of this equation, we recommend whatever to Parliament. So I think it's a proper process, and indeed a process we ourselves visualized, that it might be necessary, therefore you need in place certain provisions in the Constitution, in the law, to make that happen. The question about the Afghan free trade area, the Continental Free Trade Area, I wasn't quite sure what the question was about this, except to say that obviously this is a very important decision, very consistent with a view that the continent has taken about itself, its need for integration and African unity. And therefore the need that, even in terms of the economy, it must integrate. So it's correct, very correct, that this decision was taken to have this continental free trade area. There are obvious challenges which arise within the context of all of this. When you have a free trade area, matters like rules of origin, the people who are studying economics here will say that the issue of rules of origin arises. Because I am South Africa, I want to sell a shirt to Professor Vilnkomo who comes from Botswana. Now, I can't have this shirt produced in some other country, literally. Then it comes to, I import it and put a label, say, made in South Africa, and then export it to Botswana, a duty-free. He's entitled to say, that shirt is not made in South Africa. That's how the rules of origin thing arises. If you manufacture a car here, there's a colleague here who used to sell BMW cars. If you manufacture a BMW here and you want to export it to the next African country duty-free, the question arises, how much of that BMW originates from Africa? So the rules of trade will deal, the rules of origin will deal with matters of that kind. These are some of the negotiations that are taking place. But critical to the success of a free trade area is the production of goods and services among the countries in that free trade area, the production of goods and services which can then be traded. If I stay with this example, if Professor Vilnkomo here of Botswana produces pineapples, and I produce pineapples, why should we trade pineapples? You need different products and services produced variously among these African countries in order to generate this trade. I'm saying that, colleagues, because the matter about investment in our economies becomes a critical part of the success of the free trade area. Investment to be able to produce different products, different services. You would have noticed that Nigeria was one of the last countries to sign up to this Continental free trade area. Quite logical. Because if I'm Nigerian and I'm getting into this agreement, I look at a country like South Africa. As you know, that South Africa is going to be exporting to me many goods, duty-free into the Nigerian market, because they're already producing those things, which I'm not producing. Now, when I want to set up a factory, an industry to produce those things, they will get overwhelmed by the imports from South Africa. And therefore, there must be some way by which we protect our capacity to develop our own manufacturing. So I'm saying that is why Nigeria discusses it quite correctly, to say that you can't just open the doors everywhere because of the inequality, the inequality among these African countries. If you take what I think is a successful free trade area, is the European Union. The EU was faced with a similar challenge within its ranks, that if we want a genuine free trade area, we must kind of create a level playing field. which is why the EU had a very successful, what they call a regional policy, which entailed the transfers of capital and technology from the richer countries of the EU to the poorer countries, whether Portugal or Spain or Ireland, to make sure that they develop and therefore are able to trade on more equitable terms with the other member states. I'm saying this is a challenge that's going to face us on the continent. To make a success of the continental free trade area means necessarily there must be a process by which we encourage investment into our alternative countries and therefore the diversification of our economies so that we have different goods and services to trade among ourselves. And that's an important challenge, and I think as South Africa, we need to be sensitive to that. Not just that these countries are now open to imports from South African products, but to say we are very interested as a country that these countries must also produce goods and services to export to us. And therefore that investment process becomes important. And thank you very much, Chairperson. I think I've answered all of the questions that were posed.
Please give His Excellency another clap. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I would like to acknowledge the executive members of the African Bar Association. They're here to prepare for the College of Law International Conference. Do you like to put up your hand so that we can see you?
If they're here.
Have they come up? Oh, thank you. So we have got the President, Hannibal Uwaifo, and the Vice President, Chief Ibrahim Mak. Give them another round of welcome. And of course, we have got Professor Manamela from the College of Law and Ms. Matole. Thank you for coming. We really appreciate that. I would like to take the final round of questions. Thank you, Your Excellency. I'm now going this side. I was this side, so let me give opportunity. Yes, or ladies, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The one in gray, yeah. All right? Please remember 30 seconds, no background. Come on, ladies.
Okay. Or do you want to go first?
These people have to go first. The one in pink,
Okay.
please go first.
Just press.
Okay, whoever ready, go first.
Oh, hi. Sanbonani, ngegama nginguThembisile Mahua. I am a Master of Law candidate at the Mighty University, the University of the Land. Also a prospective student of the TM African School. I'll try and be very brief. I believe in advocating and the inclusive approach when it comes to young people. As a young person sitting here, I can really confirm that we are going through a lot. And there's another one, it is Yakala. And in actual fact, Zikala Ngembela, and I know there's a jokingly connotation when it comes to Ziyakala, but when we look at the reality of young people in this country, Ziyakala. The acting executive dean of the College of Law said that we have lost who we are, and indeed we have done that. When you look at the state of young people in this country, there's nowhere where you will go, where you'll walk, where you will not see the destituteness that young African people are in. We are engulfed in alcohol, in drugs. and that is our reality. Let me coming to my question. In ensuring that young people are not only left behind, but are part and are inclusive in the solutions that we have in this country, President, we have always preached, and this is something that continues throughout the years, that youth participation and inclusion. However, it has always been a hypothetical or an imaginative thing in this country. How do we move to the realization of young people at the front? And President, maybe if you can also just go back to when you were young, because you led when you were young as well. You're part of the ANC and part of the people that took us into this new dispensation. How then do we include the young people that are now left behind? Because we need to ensure that we are part of the solution and not the problem. We need to ensure that the young people that we see in the streets, Onyawope, we have now called them or labeled them, are not left behind. They're cutting the President.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
My name is Josephine Alexander. I'm an associate prof in the Department of English Studies. I have 2 questions, and then I have a book to give to the president for, for being in Nigeria to oversee the election that has just ended. Thank you very much for all that you do for Africa. My first question is that in 2003, I happened to be in a school, United World College of Southern Africa called Waterford, and Helen Suzman was visiting. And as somebody who came from Nigeria where our nation has failed, the question I asked her is, how can we make sure, or what can be done that South Africa does not go the way of Zimbabwe and Nigeria? And her answer to me was that in South Africa, there is a very strong civil society, and that South Africa will never go in either of those 2 countries. My question then is, what happened to these civil societies in South Africa? How come that somehow they were not able to salvage the situation? My second question to you, sir, is the fact that you have spoken to us about the fact that the ANC needs renewal. And I want to ask, what role are you, as what Novalet Bulawayo will call ANC, that is the authentic ANC, and others who are still alive like you, like those who serve as ministers during Mandela, like Albie Sachs and all of them? What role are you playing in this renewal process? What can you do to help us to make sure that this icon of an organization that was well revered all over the world can at least come back to itself and lead South Africa, and that maybe that will still be a beacon of hope to all of the African countries that are not sure of where we are going? Those are my 2 questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon to you, President. So, having listened to everyone that was talking...
Please identify yourself.
Oh, sorry. My name is Nzapo Majibi, and I'm the founder of Future Skills Lab, and I'm also an author. But what brings me here is sort of to get a sense for myself. I heard that some of the things that are important to President are people, institutions, and the economy. And for me, when I'm tying all of these things, I see that people are the first thing that we need to consider when we are looking at everything that we do. So my first question is, do you think that the renewal of the ANC will bring about a new vision for South Africa, or will they have new ideas of where the country is supposed to be heading? Because when we're listening to them, we're not finding what is new that or what the vision of South Africa is. And then also my second question then says, do you also think that we will get out of the crisis that we find ourselves in, if you consider it a crisis? Then the last one, from former president to the future first female president of the Republic, what do you think are the qualities I need to work on that South Africa need, and how does one get to cultivate those qualities as a young person that has future aspirations to be the change in South Africa? Thank you, President.
Thank you.
Good afternoon or good evening. Thank you, Program Director, for the opportunity. My name is Moeketsi Mazaleni, a master's candidate in public affairs from Tshwane University of Technology. My question to you, President, derives from your interview outside Nasrec Expo Center, 17 December, when you clearly and explicitly stated that the challenges that are faced by local government are caused by the development of their financing. So my question to you, President, does local government in South Africa has adequate access to funding for them to effectively execute their developmental and constitutional mandate? A follow-up question on this question, is a professionalized local government a dream or reality? Thank you, President.
Thank you.
That's your research question, eh?
And lastly, it was the gentleman in the cream shirt.
Good evening, everyone, and Honorable President. My name is Sipho Lukele. I'm a student of UNISA. My question is very simple. I just want to know from the President, what is the update regarding the Thabo Mbeki Presidential Library? Because I can't seem to find anything on it anyway. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to allow one more question. We have to allow His Excellency to answer. At the back, at the very back, the gentleman at the very back. Okay, order in the House. Order in the House. Let us have the gentleman at the very back, and then after the President has replied, we shall have another round. Right? It's okay, yes. Okay. Please keep it short, no background.
I will really keep it short. Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Martin Mande. I'm representing the South African Refugee-Led Network. And my question is straight to DRC. DRC is going to the election for next year. And we have a big number for IDP and refugees in the country. And there have been a couple of peace process currently going through Kenya, and we've seen all that group of people being isolated in the process. Now, South Africa, of course, has been a little bit championing the issue of process under your leadership, and now it seems like it's very quiet, and we don't know what is the position of South Africa in the DRC conflict currently. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are now going to allow His Excellency to reply. Then we shall have the last round.
It's, according to my clock here, it's 5:25. When do we stop? No, entirely up to you. Me, I'm ready to be until midnight. The program had said we finish at 5. But in fact, we started this question and answers thing a bit late. That's what I thought must go beyond at 5 o'clock. But there must be an end somewhere. Maybe we might have to take a vote on it as to when we finish. that also has to do, colleagues, I'm raising it in part because I think I must be brief in my answers, which may not be very satisfactory. But the time element, I think, is an important one. To deal with the simplest one first, the Thabo Mbeki Presidential Library, it's discussing with the Johannesburg City Council the various permits that are required from the city. Already, the city has given a number of these permits that are required, but there's some outstanding ones. And we're hoping that that might be, there are no problems in the sense of difference of opinion or anything like that. It's just, it's been availability of people. Partly because, as you know, Johannesburg City has had too many changes of government. And when the change of government, you got to start negotiations afresh and all that. But the city is not a problem, city agrees. The outstanding, I'm told, we are likely to complete that process of talking to the city by next week or thereabouts, which would mean that we've got all of the necessary agreements from the city to begin construction. So the library will start the construction of the library this year, as soon as all of those matters of permissions have been approved by the Johannesburg City Council. The process of collecting material is continuing for the library, both from within the country and outside. For instance, the latest material that will come into the library is President Kaunda's archive. So the Kaunda family and the government of Zambia have said this material must come to the library here. So that process of collection is continuing. And the Vice Chancellor referred to this. This library, of course, works as we are part of the UNISA library. So working together with UNISA, and have now been joined by the National Library of South Africa as part of this process. So this is work in progress. It's moving, and I'm saying the only obstacles now have been just these licenses from the city, which arise really basically because this month you have Mayor Mbeki, and next month is Mayor Nkomo, and which affects the speed. On the DRC situation, I honestly do not know where our government is with regard to that. Recently, I had a discussion with President Uhuru Kenyatta, who, as you know, is the envoy of the East African community on the DRC. And that position has also now been endorsed by the African Union. So President Kenyatta is very concerned to deal with exactly the matters you are raising. In the first instance, to help to resolve the conflict in the Eastern Congo, which is why, together with Angola, they agreed with the M23 for a ceasefire. And what will have to follow that, of course, not just ceasefire, but discussions between the government of the Congo and the M23 to resolve the matter of what is it that led to the birth of the M23? And therefore to resolve those questions, which relate to some of the populations, as you know, in the Eastern DRC, the Banyamulenge, But as I was saying that, I'm not quite sure where our government stands on this. But I know for a fact that President Kenyatta, as that envoy, is very, very determined that they must intervene in the Congo, as he is doing, in a manner that will also help in terms of the preparations for the next elections. I don't, as I say, I really don't quite know where our government is with regard to this, but I'm sure they would be supporting the positions that President Kenyatta is taking. The matter about the youth, the destitute youth, and the challenges facing the youth, the matter is correctly raised. In reality, it's really about what do we do with South Africa. For instance, with regard to the matter of its economy. We can't resolve the challenges facing the youth of all sorts, youth unemployment, access to education, and things like this, without addressing this fundamental matter of the fate of the South African economy. During 2020, there was a very positive development took place in the country, in that you had government, business, labor, civil society, everybody saying the problems of South Africa are so big that they need the cooperation of all of us. So government, business, labor, everybody, let's work together to find the solutions. Therefore, the need for a social compact. That was a very important decision, I'm saying, taken in 2020. And you'll recall that in September 2020, same year, these social partners produced one document to say, therefore, we are committed to act together to produce these outcomes. The problem that's arisen is that what they themselves, social partners, say, who are ready and willing to act together in order to produce these outcomes, they are not meeting to produce those outcomes. And that's a serious challenge. I'll give you one example. The government and everybody else, the social partners, have said the matter about infrastructure investment is critical in terms of the recovery of the South African economy. Infrastructure investment. Now, the agreement then is that government must produce these infrastructure projects to say, here is an infrastructure project, A, to do whatever, and it's going to require so much money. So the government must produce these proposals about infrastructure projects. And the private sector has said, we have got the money to put into those projects. So we don't have to raise money outside the country. The problem is that the government has not produced the infrastructure proposals. In part because the government has been saying that unfortunately the government does not have the capacity, doesn't have the capacity to produce these project proposals. We've got to find a solution to that problem. Because indeed, if you had that massive infrastructure investment, it would be a very important process of kickstarting this economy. and therefore creating the jobs even for young people. Creating the possibility for the training of people to fit into the jobs that are required by that resurrecting economy. All sorts of things like that. So, as a foundation, we are engaging the social partners to say this agreement, this view that they took is very important, and they must act on it. And hopefully that will succeed. You'll have noticed that the President Ramaphosa, in the latest State of the Nation address this year, he committed the government to this point and said we're determined that the social partnership must work to produce this comprehensive social compact. It's critically important, colleagues, because if you take public finances, government, it's clear the government is under a lot of stress in terms of generating the funds that are required to be invested in the economy and society. Lots of problems. Matters that Dr. Power is dealing with. If you look at the public state companies, they are all in crisis. So when you've got to be investing trillions of rand into this economy, where's that investment going to come from? I'm saying we're in a fortunate situation where the private sector says, in my lifetime, this is the first time I had this, 2020, where the private sector says we are ready to invest those monies because they've got the money. That readiness to invest in the economy has not always been there, but they're expressing it now. So it's very important that we act on that. I'm saying all of this to say, in order to be able to address the youth challenges, we need a situation in which the economy is developing. Anybody who goes around pretending that they can address the youth challenges outside of that context is not telling the truth. Yeah. Because everything costs something. Question arises, who pays? So hopefully so within that context, let's say, there's been a discussion in government for many years of building a dam on the Umzimvubu River in the Eastern Cape. We've been talking about that matter for forever. And the dam is necessary in that area. It's possible. Supply water, generate electricity, whatever. To this day, there isn't a concrete project proposal to say, here is a concrete proposal for the Mzimvubu Dam. This is how much it's going to cost. And so you, people who've got money, please invest. And they are standing there saying, we've got the money, we want to invest. Where is the project? If you did that, you would then know, look, if the Mzimvubu Dam is like this project, what kind of skills is it going to need? In what numbers? And therefore, taking care of the youth. Therefore, why don't we train the youth in those particular skills so they can become part of this project? I'm saying you can only address the matter of the youth, which is raised very correctly within that larger context. So we've got a bigger context of addressing this particular challenge. to meet what President Ramaphosa said, even in the latest State of the Nation address, that as a country we've got a responsibility to make sure that the social compact takes place. Because it's going to require a lot of, this economy is going to require a lot of money to invest in it in order to make it grow. And if we're expecting external investment to come in, why do we allow grey listing? We ignored the warnings that were given to us to please do the following so as not to be grey listed. We ignore all of that. Grey listing comes. Now we expect somebody to come from the rest of the world to invest. They are going to say, but I'm not going to invest with money launderers. It's a particular challenge, and clearly the government and the other social partners must address this matter seriously. So somebody was asking, what are you people like me? What are you doing about this ANC renewal? What are you contributing? In part, to answer that question, this is exactly the kind of question that we are raising, some of us. That you can't make this economy grow in the way that it has to grow and develop by producing wish lists. Wish lists are very, very easy to do. I can produce a book of 200 pages of wishes. It will not produce the change that we want. And so if the business people who say, as they have said, business community here, we are ready to invest R1 trillion in the South African economy over a period of 3 years. I say to people, that's the first time in 2020 I heard private business say that since 1994. I don't know what changed. It was the first time since 1994 that the private sector would make a commitment of that kind. And R1 trillion is not small money. Some of us would not know how to pronounce it. Why are we as government let that commitment pass by? So that's some of us, the older ones, are trying to insist on with regard to the government. That the government has to do things, must act correctly on this matter. And act in a very concrete way. Act in a very concrete and specific way. As I say, not just to express wishes and hopes. And that relates also to the matter that was raised about ANC renewal. And the advantage some of us have is exactly that we are older. And therefore we know of a different ANC. Not an ANC that was identified by corruption. You know, I spent, I can't remember now, 20 years plus in Zambia. Now, as members of the ANC in Zambia, we depended on what was called supplies, which meant there was a logistics place there. And twice in a year, they would come and you select clothing, the second-hand donated clothes. But every week, they give you a piece of paper to go and buy meat in a particular butcher in Lusaka. It specified how much meat you are allowed in a week. So we're depending on supplies like that. Quite late, they decided to give us a month, 14 kwacha cash. Now with 14 kwacha, you would be able to buy maybe 3 bottles of beer. And that's the end of your money. Well, or go to the cinema plus one bottle of beer. So that's the end of 14 kwacha. The consequence of that, comrades, is we come back here, home, in 1919. So we're working at ANC headquarters at Shell House. So the ANC gives us an allowance. I know an allowance to buy 2 beers, 3 beers. But this one they give me is a bit bigger than that. And I don't know what to do with it. So I gave it to my wife. I've never had a bank account. I don't know what it looks like. A credit card, I don't know what it looks like. It's because each time I don't drink beer now. So I've got to go to Mrs. Mbeki each time I want to buy something. Fortunately, she's kind enough to assist. That's a practical thing. It arises from the fact that we lived quite happily in Lusaka without money. Somebody else was managing our lives in terms of that. So you get used to it. So since then, I've never known how to handle money. I'm saying, therefore, we know of an ANC which was very different in many respects from the ANC of today. And therefore, the question that is posed, what you older people, what are you doing about this renewal matter? Is exactly to bring into the ANC that kind of experience. That the ANC is not like this. Our colleague from Nigeria, I think, was saying the real ANC. Yeah. That's part of what we bring into this process. Whether they are listening to us, I don't know. We've got a very important member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC present with us here in the meeting. Mdu Ndoli, who's sitting in front of me here. I don't know, Mdu, are you listening to us? He said yes. A colleague asked about what happened. This strong civil society that was promised. What happened? Because indeed South Africa went the wrong route. Yeah. I think I've dealt with that question. That one of the fundamental issues is the deterioration in the quality of the membership of the ANC, which was a governing party, which still is. That deterioration in the membership has an impact not only on the ANC, but necessarily on society, because we are dealing here with a governing party. And that affected civil society also. In practical ways, you could say, for instance, that you could see what happened, that in this country, before 94, the rest of the world, because of involvement in the struggle against apartheid, did a lot to support civil society with funds and all of that. So we had a very thriving civil society, in part because it had that strength, resource strength. because of the rest of the anti-apartheid world assistant. 1994 came, and those resources dried up for civil society, because now the rest of the world said, now you've got your own government. Support yourselves. You saw that what has happened over the years has been a decline in the strength and capacity, activism, and so on of civil society. That's one of the reasons, not the only. But I'm saying at the center of it was the weakening of the ANC. And therefore, the consequence that you were worried about, that the South Africa itself began to develop some of the negative consequences, characteristics that we've seen in other countries on the continent. Here we can only change that by changing the ANC. Unfortunately, I'm saying the ANC itself in conference says we must change ourselves. That change, the matter of a new vision for South Africa, the things that will take South Africa out of its crisis, are the things I'm talking about. One of the things that must happen in order to take this country out of its crisis is to take the economy out of crisis, to generate the resources that you all need. I'm quite certain that we need to have a look at the financing of local government, because it doesn't make sense to have a municipal council in some rural area, African rural area, and expect it to generate resources to be able to do anything. They can't. They need resources from elsewhere in the country. There's a very important proposal. We were discussing this with some colleagues, some comrades yesterday. A very important proposal made by the Presidential Economic Advisory Council on this same matter. That, for instance, where you have the Development Bank of Southern Africa, the DBSA, which is one of the main funders of local government, that the DBSA should stop funding the metropolitan municipalities, because metropolitan municipalities have capacity to raise funds, and they do. The other municipalities don't have that capacity. And therefore, that the funds that the DBSA is able to mobilize must go to these other municipalities that don't have the capacity to raise their own funds, away from the metros. And therefore, that even the idea and the practice of the district development model is important. If, in fact, you then use that district, you use the district as a real instrument for change in the district in which it is, impacting on the local municipalities. For that, it needs funds, the district. And therefore, that the DBSA, part of what needs to happen is that the DBSA must shift its resources to those districts which have no capacity to raise funds. So when you talk about what do we do with local government, that's part of what you need to do, is to look at the funding formula for local government. Is it the right one? I suspect it isn't. But then, of course, as a consequence of that, once you say, we must then make sure that there are these larger resources available at local government level in those areas. You've got to answer the question, do those municipalities have the capacity to look after those funds correctly? To make sure that they are not looted to make sure that they are used for the purposes that are intended. That's an intervention that has to be made in local government to develop that kind of capacity. Even just to look after the additional resources you must put in there. So it is possible. It is possible to restructure local government in that way. The political parties have got another question that they must answer. That the people they put into local government must be people who are honest. People who are really dedicated to serving the people. You know that the law, with regard to local government, provides for the establishment of ward committees and describes how they should function and how they should be composed. Yeah, I'm sure you can go across the country now, today, tomorrow. I don't know to how many such ward committees you'll find which are functioning properly. Very few. So the capacity of the communities to have oversight of their own council is not there. I'm saying these are elements that you need to attend to in order to build the kind of government you need at local level so that the municipalities, local government becomes effective. Again, it's a detail, it's a matter of detail, of practical detail. I'm saying the political parties must answer the question. Who are these people they are putting into local government? You have, I'm told, you have councillors. Councillors who can't read and write. And so when the councillors to meet as a report that is prepared by the municipal manager, they can read it. And so what contribution are they going to make in terms of municipal government? The ANC, and the members of the ANC here would know that the ANC has established a political school, the Oliver Tambo Political School, which it's got a proper courses for people to follow. And so you can do so many modules and you get a certificate to say that you've studied these issues, you've understood them. It helps you in your political development as a member of the ANC. When the last local government elections took place, were held, the ANC took a very important, correct decision to say it must put in place a process to vet the people that it was proposing as mayors. Put together in place that process. So indeed the ANC in Johannesburg, a region, would come and say, this a short list of 3 people. These are one of these 3 can be mayor of Johannesburg. So the committee would then have a look at that and interview the 3 people and decide which one of these is the best to be a mayor, and then say, look, so-and-so, this is the person that we should put forward as a proposal for a mayor. You know what happened, colleagues, in that process? So some of these teams interviewing these candidate mayors, I come there as a candidate mayor, and I produce this certificate I've got from the Owa Tambo School, which shows that I've qualified in this. I'm really a good cadre of the ANC. I'm educated in its politics. And then the team that is interviewing these candidates, they ask me questions about the subjects I've studied, and I can't answer. What they found was that what's happening is that I speak to Spusis of Inkomo here. I say, Spusis, so please do me a favor. Please go and study at the OR Tambo School in my name. So he studies as Thabo Mbeki and really studies and he qualifies. And they give him this thing. So when, as a candidate mayor, I'm producing this thing, it's him who studied for me. And that's why I can't answer the questions. I'm talking about something that was happening now at the end of 2021. That's why I'm saying the parties must really be serious about the matter. Who are these people that they are putting into local government? It can't be these people who pay, I'm told it's 5,000, 6,000 rand that they pay. So I owe Professor Vinkomoye 5,000 rand because he did it for me. Yeah. You can't have those people in local government, particularly in a situation where you introduce these larger resources which local government needs. You are opening the space for looting. But are our parties, including the ANC, are they sensitive enough to this thing? Who are these people that we're putting into local government? I know in some instances where the people who are put in government are actually criminals. Yeah. But they are labeled as, these are members of the ANC and all that. So the new vision that must come from the ANC out of the crisis, get country out of crisis, has to do with dealing with these very practical matters. What do we do about the economy? What do we do about local government? As the economy changes, what practical measures are we putting in place to deal with the challenges of the youth? These are all practical things that need to be answered. Yeah. That's where the new vision must come from. Yeah. So I've dealt with the matter, therefore, of the local government definitely needs for new funding, but also needs other things. It must be possible. It must happen that we do indeed have a professional public service. The ANC started discussing this thing quite a long time ago, 2005, 2006, that we had, between 1994 and then, the country had stabilized, and therefore it was not possible to produce a professional public service. And steps were taken at national level. Even then, they got disrupted because of the ANC's own challenges, that process. But it has to happen, and it is certainly possible. The qualities that, what qualities must people develop in order to be able to make their own positive contribution, including to play a role as leaders? I think there are really these two qualities that we're looking for. It's really a real, genuine commitment to serve the people of South Africa. It's a genuine commitment to serve the people of South Africa, not yourself. And certainly the capacity to be able to do something to help to bring about that change. So that you engage with the challenges of the country in a way that actually produces change. That's why at the beginning I was raising the matter about this particular school, this African school. And it is important in terms of the producing the change agents. A commitment to serve the people and a capacity to serve the people. That's basically what one needs. And of course, a courage enough to tell the truth. Courage enough to say, Comrade President, you are wrong. You know, and the kind of honesty such that, you know, as a comrade of mine, quite old, used to make a joke a few years back when people in government would say something, even in a private conversation, he would say jokingly, comrade, you must be very careful about what you say, because it might be career limiting. I'm saying this, one of the qualities we're talking about is not to behave like that. I can't tell the truth because it might be career limiting. And I think you find a lot of that, certainly in our government. People who behave in very strange ways. I think I know Professor Langabola here. I know her very well. But suddenly she's behaving in funny ways. Only to discover that it's career limiting that she's avoiding. No, and it's not, I'm sorry, not you. Not you. But I'm saying these are the qualities really we need. Yeah. And you know, and the interesting thing, I'm sure as all of us know, the ordinary people, they know that, they can sense it. That this one is really interested in our welfare. So it doesn't matter how loud you sing and you toy and all this thing. If you don't have this quality, the people will know that that one is just a singer and dancer. I think I've answered all the questions.
I'm a kingo, yes, I'm a kingo. I'm a kingo.